what you call it? Big drip. Ice chain, pure water. Ice, ice, ice. You got the cab, but can't afford them. You got the bad, but can't. Act up, you could get smashed up. Act up, you could get smashed up. Act up, you could get smashed up. Carry like that, baby girl, you break it down.
Start 9 till 7.
Every year, the RBC Race for the Kids raises funds for Caribbean children and various youth causes. For 2020, the RBC Race for the Kids is going virtual with support for the Cayman Big Brother, Big Sister Foundation. So register today at www.rbcraceforthekids.com and let's virtually run together on Saturday 17th or Sunday 18th of October for this virtual family fun run. Walk or run, pick your own route, but be safe and make sure you socially distance. Every step is a step forward in helping our youth reach their true potential.
Burger King Sawyer, the perfect burger is ready.
Very well. Tell me.
It's a quarter pounder with melted cheese and mayo. You see, the simplicity is what makes...
Add another patty.
Another? But Sawyer, that will make it a half pounder.
Add bacon.
Bacon?
Crispy onions.
Burger King has gone wild and brought back the Steakhouse King. 2 quarter-pound flame grilled beef patties, thick-cut bacon, A1 thick and hearty sauce, crispy onions, melted cheese, and mayo. Only $7.50 or $10.35 for the combo, and only at Burger King for a limited time.
Are you signed up to a MyCUC account? It's only the best way for you to manage energy usage and save on your CUC bill with Customer Connect, CUC's energy management tool. And you can also make quick and easy bill payments through PowerPay. And guess what? It just got better. Now you can see the dollar value of your energy usage and daily cost breakdown when you use Customer Connect. You can see comparisons of your costs month to month, set usage alerts, and avoid being surprised with a high electricity bill at the end of the month. Simply sign up at www.cuc-cayman.com and click on My CUC. Once logged in, track and monitor all of your energy usage information through Customer Connect and make payments at your convenience with PowerPay. And CUC is giving you the power to save.
Live from Star 927 Studios in the center of Cayman's capital city, Georgetown. This is Straight Talk with Ruth Anna.
Good evening, everybody. You are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young, always honored to be your host here on Straight Talk. Today is Monday, which means it is Medical Monday, brought to you by our partners at Health City Cayman Islands. We are talking World Health Day today, along with some exciting screenings that they will be offering on October the 3rd in honor of World Heart Day. And so they are in studio with me. I am joined by Mr. Shamari Scott and Dr. Raghu. I think it is Dr. Raghu's first time in the studio with me since we've been moving through all of this COVID madness. So we'll catch up with both of them shortly. 943-3700 is the line in studio. You can also WhatsApp me at 324-1565, or you can email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. And of course, for those of you who are on the internet, we are streaming live on Facebook, as well as you can access our stream on YouTube, and you can listen to that live audio stream on the Star 92.7 website as well. So we got you covered. For those of you who are on your way up in traffic, please drive safely. And just a quick reminder for those who may have missed the announcement. So this week is my final week as your host of Straight Talk. We're on air today, and then on Wednesday, I will be doing a turnover interview where you'll get the opportunity to meet our newest host of Straight Talk here on Star 92.7. I won't let the cat out of the bag, so you'll have to tune in from 5 to 6 on Wednesday afternoon, where you'll get the opportunity to meet them, and they will take up the reins on Monday, next week, Monday, here on Straight Talk. So this will be my final Medical Monday, and so it's always a bittersweet moment, but we will get to catch up with the team from Health City in just a few short moments. You guys know the deal. Before we go any further here in our conversation, we always start our time with the reading of today's Daily Bread. So today's Daily Bread is entitled Never Enough, and the scripture comes from Ecclesiastes 1 verse 8 and reads, "The eye never has enough of seeing." So the writer goes on to write, Frank Borman commanded the first space mission that circled the moon. He wasn't impressed. The trip took 2 days both ways. Frank got motion sickness and threw up. He said being weightless was cool for 30 seconds. Then he got used to it. Up close, he found the moon drab and pockmarked with craters. His crew took pictures of the gray wasteland, then became bored. Frank went where no one had gone before. It wasn't enough. If he quickly tired of an experience that was out of this world, perhaps we should lower our expectations for what lies in this one. The teacher of Ecclesiastes observed that no earthly experience delivers ultimate joy. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. We may feel moments of ecstasy, but our elation soon wears off and we seek the next thrill. Frank had one exhilarating moment when he saw the earth rise from the darkness behind the moon. Like a blue and white swirled marble, our world sparkled in the sun's light. Similarly, our truest joy comes from the sun shining on us. Jesus is our life, the only ultimate source of meaning, love, and beauty. Our deepest satisfaction comes from out of this world. Our problem? We can go all the way to the moon, yet still not go far enough. Thanks be to God for that word today. As always, here on Straight Talk, we remind you, encourage you each and every day to take a little bit of time out to just meditate on His word, whether it be the morning or the evening, or right here with me. I guess right here with the new host next week, Monday through Thursday on Straight Talk. With that, I open up my microphones. I invite Dr. Raghu and Mr. Shamari Scott from the team at Health City Cayman Islands into the conversation this afternoon. I'd first have to a quick catch up with you, Dr. Raghu. How are you doing? It's been a while since we've seen each other and since we've spoken. How have you been through these crazy times?
Hi, good evening, Ruth. Good evening, everyone.
Good
I am
evening.
good, actually. Yeah, in these challenging times of COVID pandemic, it was difficult
Mhm.
to personally interact. Last time I did this chat show via
Yeah.
media link, via Zoom.
Yes.
This time I'm happy to be here in the studio, with you
Yes.
guys.
And that is always like it, as much as technology enables us to do so many things. I'm sorry, I never tire of having people in the studio with me. And Mr. Shamari, how are you doing? How is your
Ooh, you had my mic off before, so when I was booing when you were talking about the fact that it was your last straight talk, and
Mhm.
I was like, oh, so you're not going to tell me? So who said I'm going to turn up next week?
You
So
must.
you better tell me, because
You got to tune in on Wednesday, Shamari.
well,
You'll
I
get
might
to
just
meet
not
our
turn
new
up.
host. They're no stranger to the public,
Okay.
but certain when I use the word meet them loosely, because
Okay.
certainly they are no stranger to the public eye at all.
Okay.
So you'll get the opportunity to meet them in their capacity, in one of their new capacities as the newest host of Straight Talk.
All right, you got me curious now, but still, I might come. You might twist my arm.
I'll drag you kicking and screaming, and I promise you, they are equally as nice. I promise.
You promise?
Promise. I
Okay.
promise. Pinky promise. Brownie promise. I promise. They're and even more talented, I would beg to say. So yes, I'm telling you, and you'll see on Wednesday. I have a slight. I will say I have a slight bias for a particular reason toward the new host. So I'll explain that on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yes.
All
So
right,
you're in
okay.
good hands. I promise.
We're in good hands.
You're in
Really
good
at
hands.
that.
Promise. But I hope you've been over the last
I
week.
have been good. I've been good. Just a pleasure to always be here, and a pleasure to be here on your last Medical Monday.
Yeah.
Not your last show, because your last show is when? Thursday?
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday.
Wednesday. And I say, I say I'm sure that radio is something I won't ever leave totally behind.
Right.
But in an official host capacity, I am certainly
That's what happens when you get too successful and you
oh,
just,
whatever.
leave these little side things alone. I understand.
Oh no!
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
radio is anything but a side thing. It is a
Well, I know.
full-time job.
That I understand. But Ruth Anna,
Mhm.
on a serious note,
Mhm.
it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It would have been what, 2 years?
3.5.
3.5.
3 since
It was right after the election.
right before the nomination day. Because remember, I would have
Right.
taken over right before Austin
Right.
Harris declared, right before, like a week out from nomination day. Yeah,
So,
3.5
so
years.
you've been with us for a term.
Yeah, that's about it. A whole cycle. And
So it
so,
makes us wonder.
no, no,
Yeah. Okay.
no.
All right.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
People keep asking. They're like, "Does this mean that are you preparing to declare?" No, I am not. That is, I am. What I am doing is more time with a budding toddler,
Yes.
and a growing real estate business, which both
Understand.
are an absolute blessing.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
when you get too successful, you gotta leave these other things behind. But that's okay.
No.
Um, but definitely on a serious note, now that we're here, just
Mhm.
wanted to mention, Ruth Anna, before we jump into the specifics of World Heart Day, which
Sure.
is tomorrow,
Hmm.
as well as a promotion that we are pushing forward in order to make sure that people can come forth,
Hmm.
um, and take certain tests that Dr. Ragu will explain in order to once again check, with the risk factors to make sure
Yes.
everybody is as good as possible. Just recently, as you know, Ruth Anna, we have entities such as PBS, USA Today, Harvard that are
Hmm.
always studying what we're doing at Health City because of the greatest quality of outcomes that
Yes.
we're able to actually provide that rival the top medical facilities in the US. And then
Mm.
obviously by charging a price that's affordable,
Yes.
which is at times half the price, even more, then that's why we're a source of news to all of these entities.
Correct.
And just recently we were looking at our 6 month mark,
Hmm.
um, and just wanted to read out some of the quality indicators so that people can, even though it might mean anything to you, these are very, very good numbers.
Okay.
And especially when it's zero, you realize how good it is.
Okay.
Our adverse drug events rate is 0%.
Wow.
Catheter associated UTI ratio is 0.06%.
Wow.
Our elective procedure mortality rate is 0.19%.
Wow.
And our rate of readmission within 30 days is a little over 1%. And when you
Excellent.
actually, if you were in the medical field and or you understood exactly what those numbers are, when you actually measure that up to other top-notch institutions,
Hmm.
it's as good and in many cases better than what you would have. And that's why, a lot of times persons, now that they're here, that may have otherwise gone off island, the few
Hmm.
people that still did,
Correct.
um, they should have comfort knowing that we're here and
Hmm.
we're offering some of the highest care that you can get in the medical field, as well as it was even somebody in an earlier show who wrote in from Bermuda and
Hmm.
talking about the fact that they love Dr. Ravi and Dr. Ragu, and she and her son came to the Cayman Islands to avail themselves of our services.
Oh wow.
And think about it, Bermuda, for those that don't know, is way up top, right?
It
It's
is
very close to New York,
closer to the U.S. Really.
and all of those medical facilities that you would have in the Northeast. And Bermuda is a lot like Cayman with high insurance penetration that people can afford
Hmm.
to actually just take a flight. And think about that. They're taking probably twice the amount of travel time,
Hmm.
and there are no direct flights, so they have to stay over a little bit in Miami, either to catch the connection or overnight to come
Over.
to us. And persons are leaving an island which is as sophisticated as the Cayman Islands, that they can just take a hop 1 hour and go to New York, and traveling 4 to 6 to 7 to 8 hours
Hmm.
at a time with the layover time in order to get to us based on our quality of outcomes. Because with insurance, they're not paying out of pocket anyway.
Correct.
So it's just based on quality of outcomes. And I only state that to state that we continue um, to demonstrate that we're here with our quality, and more so than treating you after on the back end, where Dr. Ragu will be running into a cath lab at 2 o'clock in the morning if you have a heart attack, in order
Yeah.
at times to put in a stent to save your life. Prior to getting to that point is
Hmm.
why we put on these promotions, so that we can catch things and state, let's change your dietary habits, or maybe
Hmm.
you need to tweak this or that, or God forbid we actually find something that we can actually stop it before you have a major event. And that's why for World Heart Day we are moving forward with a promotion that Dr. Ragu will be able to explain why we're doing that promotion and what we're trying to find.
And thank you for sharing all of that. And I'll tell you, like many people, I had like the quality indicators that that you mentioned earlier, you don't oftentimes, from in my life anyway, it doesn't come up until you're about to do surgery, right? And I these aren't things that the average person ever thinks about, really. And I know that that only became relevant in my life in 2008. And I remember when, like, the surgeon at the time, I was in the US and going to do surgery, and they start talking about these types of statistics. And I'm still in university, so my dad was there, and my dad's a numbers guy. Okay, so he's like, so when the doctor started kind of giving his stats at the time, my father was like, okay, hold on, pause. This is what I understand now. So, and he wanted to clarify those statistics. And that's where I kind of learned why those statistics, what they were, and why they were important, and the fact that those are some awesome stats that and indicators that you just mentioned. So if for many people, if you've never had surgery and never had a reason to really come about that information, know that should the time come when you have to be admitted to hospital, and we don't, I, for me, fortunately, at that time it was something that was planned. But in most cases, some things are an emergency, or even if it's planned, that those numbers become very important to your well-being. Right. So I just, one of those other weird things that information I came about in life through circumstances. And if you could just remind people, as you were talking about, before we go into World Heart Day, and what you have offering, you mentioned something about insurance, and I know we haven't talked about that in a while. So I just want you to remind the listening public, what do they have? What's the for a consultation? Right? What do they pay even if they don't have insurance, and who can they reach out to if they want to verify benefits? Because sometimes that's a lot of people wonder with the local providers, how can they find out what they may or may not have to pay if they need to come up to Health City for any type of consultation?
Yeah, definitely. So the most you'll pay out of pocket if you don't have insurance is 130 US,
Mm-hmm.
and the most you'll pay if there is co-payments would be $32 US.
Awesome.
So
Thank you
these
for
are all US. All our prices are always in US. So you see, you already get a 20% discount.
Amen to that. Lord, yes. When it comes to medical bills, that is absolute blessing. But thank you for sharing that, Shamari. Dr. Raghu, I want to turn over to you. So World Heart Day, which is tomorrow, I would like you to share with the listening public, why is World Heart Day important? And what is the theme for this year's World Heart Day?
Yeah. Uh, See, the leading cause of mortality
Mm-hmm.
in the world is due to cardiovascular diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And the importance of observing World Heart Day every year
Mm-hmm.
is to highlight, the reasons why the mortality and morbidity due to cardiovascular diseases is increasing, is on the rise, and how to prevent them
Mm-hmm.
and how to treat them.
Mm-hmm.
This year's emphasis is on, because in these challenging times of COVID, the theme has been like use heart to beat cardiovascular diseases.
Mm.
So that's the theme of 2020 World Heart Day.
Okay,
Yeah,
and do you mind explaining that theme a little bit for me?
yeah. Use heart,
Mm-hmm.
like in a philosophical sense. Use
Okay,
your heart.
got
Use
it,
whatever you got to
got it.
prevent cardiovascular diseases.
Okay, and because
Yeah,
especially because there's a mortality rate,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
can I ask, is I don't know if you know these stats, but in the region, right? How do is there are there any difference between different regions on the I guess the stats regarding mortality related to cardiovascular illness and disease?
Yeah. There are so many clinical markers
Mm-hmm.
for cardiac risk assessment, and one of them is ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the Caucasians,
Mm-hmm.
the American Indians, the Mexican Americans, the American Afro Americans,
Mm-hmm.
they are all at high risk of having this cardiovascular morbidity and mortality.
Mm-hmm.
So these calculators, the risk calculators, what we use to assess the cardiac risk, which predicts the future chances of having a cardiac event,
Mm-hmm.
differs in different geographical locations. That's why these risk assessing tools
Yes.
implement the local factors, take into consideration the local things also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why and I'm
And
asking.
just to mention, Ruth Anna, so
Sure.
obviously the Afro Caribbean and Indo Caribbean demographics
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times mirror, and in certain instances in the Caribbean, we seem to be worse, right? So when you're looking at
Yes.
diabetes, and even if you were to compare it to the African American community, in certain islands, we actually worse than it would
Wow.
be in the Afro Caribbean. And I'm trying to remember the island now, but it would either be Bermuda and or Barbados, the bees. I can't remember which one. I have to go do
Okay.
the research again, where the incidence of diabetes is higher, much higher, to the point where they have specific units, that when you look proportion of population,
Yes.
people want to come in and do studies why you would need to have that amount of beds for dialysis
Wow.
and the such.
Wow.
So just to state that, obviously we have the correct markers and you're looking at ethnicity, but even outside of Cayman and islands that we would help to take care of,
Hmm.
some of the risk factors are much higher based, I guess, on lifestyle and other aspects as well.
Lifestyle meaning food.
Yeah, and in certain instances, lack of um, physical activity. Back in the
Yeah.
day, we used to eat yam and all of that, but the men were outside
Labor.
either on ships and or working on the land, and
Hmm.
the females were either raising kids and or helping. And
Yeah.
now we sit in front of
Because
computers,
we fancy.
but we
Hmm.
have proportion sizes that are larger and still have um, the same meals. And
Hmm.
at times we also supplement it with all of the artificial items as well, which then makes it a much worse diet as well
Yeah.
as less exercise and the such.
Yeah, and so it just makes this conversation so critical and so important. So World Heart Day is being celebrated tomorrow, but you guys are offering a special service, essentially to the public, at a special price on October 3rd. Right,
Yeah.
Dr. Ragu, if you could explain about the screening that you guys are offering and what people could expect during the screening.
Yeah, this cardiac risk screening is done basically to predict the future risk of cardiac events.
Mhm.
So when I say cardiac events, it not only refers to the heart, it also refers to strokes, brain
Mm.
strokes. It also refers to peripheral vascular disease like the arterial diseases of the limbs
Mhm.
and other organs in the body. It also refers to the aortic diseases. So wherever there is an atherosclerotic component involved, so it
Mhm.
does not restrict particularly to the heart.
Right.
So this basic screening is important because after a certain age, the chances of developing cardiovascular events
Mhm.
increases, and when somebody has risk factors which predisposes to these cardiovascular events, then the chances are very high.
Mhm.
So if you can intervene at the right time
Yes.
and prevent these risk factors or treat these risk factors, we can bring down the morbidity and mortality due to these cardiovascular diseases. That's the aim
Mhm.
of celebrating this World Heart Day, and that is why we are going to offer this package in honor of World Heart Day on October the 3rd,
Mhm.
which includes essentially the person's physical examination, the
Mhm.
clinical history taking, then the lifestyle factors, and family history, and also look for traditional and non-traditional risk factors.
Okay. What
And
would what would be considered a non-traditional risk factor?
non-traditional risk factor, like which are rare risk factors, like homocysteine levels in the blood,
Mhm.
lipoprotein little a levels.
Okay.
So there are some conditions which are not usually seen, which are
Mhm.
thought to increase the risk of these cardiovascular problems. So they are the non-traditional ones. The
Okay.
traditional ones are the usual stuff like age,
Mhm.
gender, ethnicity, diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol issues, obesity,
Yes.
smoking, excess of alcohol consumption. So these are all very conventional risk factors.
Right.
So when a person walks into a clinic on Saturday, the October 3rd, what we are going to do is take a proper medical history
Mhm.
about the cardiovascular, with the main, the focus being on the cardiovascular system,
Yes.
and then ask about the lifestyle, of that person, then ask about the genetics,
Mhm.
then about the treatment for diabetes, high blood pressure. Then we have got a cardiac risk assessment tool.
Okay.
which the American College of Cardiology has given us. So you just have to feed in certain numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a percentage of risk factor, the
Okay.
risk. Like if it is a low risk, it's less than 5%.
Okay. So that's
Yeah,
considered low risk.
low risk.
Okay.
Then intermediate risk
Mhm.
is less than 20%,
Okay.
and high risk is more than or equal to 20%. So based on these factors, we are going to calculate the risk,
Mm.
and then we are going to have a shared decision making. Yeah, you
Mhm.
sit across, in the consultation chamber, discuss
Mhm.
what are the possibility of one having a future cardiovascular event, what are the steps to be taken
Mhm.
to ameliorate these problems,
It's
in the
risks.
future. So these are the kind of things we are going to plan, and this includes blood works in the
Mhm.
form of lipid profile,
Okay.
that is the cholesterol testing and glycosylated hemoglobin, that's
Mhm.
also known as HbA1c.
Mhm.
So most of the audience might be knowing about the importance of lipid testing, and looking for diabetes.
Okay.
HbA1c is a marker, so one would know whether he's in the diabetic range or pre-diabetes or non-diabetic range based on the numbers.
Okay. And let me who would you recommend? And well, Shamar, if you could share, what is the cost of this screening, and do people need to make appointments to come in for the screening?
Yes, definitely. So the cost is $299 US.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a specific email as well as a specific number. So it's going to be World Heart Day at healthcity.ky. So that's World Heart Day at healthcity.ky. Or you can call or text 325-7271. That's 325-7271, and just outline that you'd want to come in for the specific offer, and we'll be able to set that up. It's going to be between 9 and 12
Mm-hmm.
on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and with Dr. Ravi and Dr. Ragu. So we'll divide and conquer.
Okay.
Half go one way, half go the other way. They're both absolutely fabulous doctors, so you don't have
Yeah.
to worry about one over the other.
Mm-hmm.
And what's also great about this is that we're doing it on a Saturday, knowing that because there's still people who work on Saturdays as well,
Yes.
including us. Most people work Monday through Friday traditionally. So we wanted to make it on a Saturday so that people could avail themselves of this wonderful offer.
Awesome. And so all they have to do is email the email, make their reservation, and they come in on Saturday and have the screening done. So, Dr. Agu, who do you recommend uh, come in for this screening? Is there, is this something that's for everyone, or is there kind of guidelines in which you would suggest that people, that they fall under, that you consider important for them to come in for the screening?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, the guidelines recommend
Okay.
people in the age group of 20 to 79 years
Okay.
to have a screening for cardiac risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
But the higher the age, more the number of risk factors,
Mm-hmm.
higher the chances of having a future cardiac event. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would recommend people in the age group of 30, 35 to 40 and above
Mm-hmm.
to have their cardiac risk assessment done. Yeah.
So definitely anybody like 40 and over
Yeah.
usually, but if you have some of these risk factors, then the younger you are with those risk factors would mean that
Yeah.
you should
Mm-hmm.
probably come in as well,
You
because
know
you
the
would have heard even young persons, relatively young,
Yeah.
that you're hearing having these type of events, whether 30, 32,
Mm-hmm.
33.
Yeah.
And we've also heard about other instances where even through our executive health check,
Yeah.
people have caught serious issues
Wow.
that they're then able to modify their lifestyle, and or it was serious enough that we were able to have a procedure to stop
Wow.
the eventuality of what was to come.
Because I can hear, 20-year-olds saying, well, why would I need to come in, for a screening? But the reality is, yes, there are statistics that say, okay, you're more prone to it at this age, or this, with these risk factors. But I think of myself, being a young woman in college, and having my endocrinologist. And as you were talking about family history and all those things, you don't appreciate how like the role that family medical history plays in your own life,
Yep.
unless you're kind of faced with that conversation. And I very clearly remember my endocrinologist at the time when I was away at university saying, if your family, basically, if your family medical history wasn't what it is, then I wouldn't recommend surgery. But because your family medical history, not even my own, but
Yeah.
because your family medical history is what it is in terms of certain comorbidities and such, she was recommending a surgery. And I was 24 or 5 at the
Yeah.
time. And so I didn't appreciate until that time, because I remember, like, I thought it was so strange. Like, she called she wanted to talk to my parents here in Cayman, and I'm like, listen, I am here at the doctor. Why do you need to talk to my parents? And she's sitting there and she asks so many questions. So I'm sitting there and like, why is this even important? And so you don't appreciate it unless you're faced with an instance where those questions are necessary. And so people, I think I really want to encourage people that even if you for some reason think that you are well and fine, and oh well, that's my mom or that's my dad or my sister, brother, whatever, and that doesn't have any impact on me. You don't, sometimes you don't fully understand until you sit down and talk to a medical professional about how that plays a role in your own life and what that means in terms of your own risk, unless you have those conversations. So I encourage people to avail themselves of this screening. But I have so many other questions. I was like watching the break come up and I was like, oh my God, okay, I will have to wait till after the break. So when we come back from this break, we'll be gone for about 2 minutes and a little bit of change. And when we come back, I have more questions for Dr. Raghu and Shamari Scott, celebrating World Heart Day tomorrow, as well as their heart screening that they are offering to the public on October 3rd. So we're going to learn more about that as in the second half of the show. It is 5:32 on the Star 92.7 clock, and we will be right back after the break.
Join the conversation. The phone lines are now open. 943-3700. You can also find us on Facebook or email us at straighttalkci@gmail.com.
Every year, the RBC Race for the Kids raises funds for Caribbean children and various youth causes. For 2020, the RBC Race for the Kids is going virtual with support for the Cayman Big Brother, Big Sister Foundation. So register today at www.rbcraceforthekids.com and let's virtually run together on Saturday 17th or Sunday 18th of October for this virtual family fun run. Walk or run, pick your own route, but be safe and make sure you socially distance. Every step is a step forward in helping our youth reach their true potential.
Yeah, I heard he got that hot new thing. It's called
Switch to Flow now and keep your number.
Oh, you just gonna stand there, huh?
Switch your prepaid number and get 5 gigs of data valid for 30 days. Or switch to postpaid and get your first month free on us. Flow is giving you so much more. What are you waiting for? Make the switch now. Visit any one of our retail stores to sign up now. Call 747-5050 or visit discoverflow.ky/switch. Flow, you deserve to be on the biggest and fastest network.
Have you checked out the Island Heritage Insurance website? They have upgraded their online payment options to make it easier for you to get a quote, make a claim, and renew your policy. Log on to islandheritageinsurance.com. Island Heritage Insurance is also here for you this hurricane season with helpful tips from their Hurricane Handbook. Just log on to islandheritageinsurance.com/hurricane.
Roll back. Every Wednesday, all Rubis stations are rolling back the price on all fuel purchases by 20 cents. Every customer will save 20 cents on every gallon of fuel purchased on Wednesday. Every customer, only at Rubis. Roll back. Roll back. Only at participating Rubis service stations.
Welcome back to Straight Talk with Ruth Anna on Star 927.
We are back, folks, and you are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young. Today is Monday, which means it is Medical Monday, brought to you by our partners at Health City Cayman Islands. I am joined in studio this afternoon by Dr. Raghu and Mr. Shamari Scott. We are talking about World Heart Day being celebrated tomorrow, the importance of World Heart Day, and the cardiovascular screening that they are offering up at Health City on October 3rd. We are risk factors, family medical history, just how critical this is in the hopes that by understanding where your cardiovascular health is and what your personal risk factors are, that you may be able to make early decisions to ensure that your heart and your cardiovascular system are as healthy as possible, and to make sure that there is nothing going unnoticed in relation to your cardiovascular system that you may not know about. But Dr. Eric, we want to get right back to you now in relation to the screening, right? The cardiovascular screening. I will preface this by saying that I was in a bit of a debate recently with someone. I use debate mildly, right? I did this very mild discussion about it because I was very passionate about my half of the discussion. So, when we talk about the cardiovascular system, what are we referring to?
Yeah, it basically refers to the heart and the blood vessels of the body.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it encompasses all of that,
Yeah.
right? Which is why you say it also includes, if you're talking about strokes,
Yeah.
and other arterial diseases,
So,
right?
so were you correct?
I
Or-
was.
Okay.
I
I just had
was.
to check.
I
That-
absolutely
see?
was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see you ticking off to let that person know, and you probably told them, listen in so I can prove you wrong.
I am guilty as charged, but listen, we were in a very heated debate.
So that's why in the very beginning I highlighted that
Mhm.
when we do a cardiovascular risk assessment, it
Mhm.
does not necessarily pertain only to the heart,
Yes.
but also the various vascular structures of our body.
Yes, I just wanted to make
So-
sure that that wasn't missed.
And the second thing, in continuation to what you asked just before you took a break about
Yes.
who needs to undergo this
Mhm.
kind of risk assessment, though the guidelines suggest that it should be in the age group of 20 to 79,
Mhm.
but in the age group of 20 to 39, for those who are less than 40 years of age,
Mhm.
these risk calculators don't provide an accurate estimate,
Mhm.
because there are always going to be exceptions.
Correct.
And people who have certain conditions like type 1 diabetes mellitus,
Mhm.
who have familial disorders of cholesterol, who have high values of cholesterol,
Mhm.
people over the age of 79 years, or people who already have an existing cardiovascular problem, in those the approach would be different
Mhm.
compared to this screening process.
Okay.
And in some people or patients who are in the intermediate risk group,
Okay.
like you have assessed the calculator based risk,
Mhm.
they are in the intermediate group. You don't know whether to start them on treatment or just keep them on lifestyle measures.
Yes.
That is when the CT coronary calcium comes into picture. So that's when we advise patients to
Okay.
undergo this coronary calcium score,
Mhm.
and based on the values, we can decide on which patient is going for lifestyle modification or which patient is going for an aggressive therapy.
Okay.
So that is one more thing which we have in the package.
Okay.
And not last but not the least, when we are discussing about this offer on
Mhm.
3rd October, they are going to meet our lifestyle modification team, which
Okay.
includes a dietitian and a physiotherapist, to get some guidelines on the do's and don'ts of eating
Mhm.
and physical exercise.
And I thank you for sharing that. And because I was going to ask you, when you talk about lifestyle modification, kind of, if you could give us an idea of what we might be looking at, right? For those who may have some risk but don't need an aggressive course of treatment at this time. And I guess generally speaking, for people who, to the general public who may want to just make smarter lifestyle choices in relation to their cardiovascular health, what are some of the things that we can do or should be doing in our day to day life to try to ensure that our cardiovascular system is at optimum functioning?
Yeah, that's another good question. We so far discussed about on whom we do need to do these risk assessment and how we should be doing it. But the most important question is, why should we be doing it?
Yes.
That is what we need to answer here.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are different levels of prevention.
Mhm.
Like if you can prevent a risk factor which could lead to a cardiovascular disease, that is called primordial prevention. So that starts at very young age.
Okay.
Then primary prevention is somebody has risk factors like hypertension or diabetes or cholesterol problems,
Mhm.
but they don't have heart attacks or strokes. So before the onset of the disease,
Mhm.
that is primary prevention.
Okay.
Secondary prevention is somebody has already got cardiovascular disease like strokes or heart attacks
Mhm.
or peripheral arterial diseases. In them, how to treat and achieve the goal of therapy.
Yes.
So these are the different levels, different targets of prevention.
Okay.
That's why we need to assess this cardiovascular risk score.
Okay.
And there are some risk enhancing factors also, other
Okay.
than what I just mentioned, Like somebody has got family history, genetics of heart disease, then some people have metabolic syndrome. Yeah, that's another entity where it's a syndrome. It's a combination of several factors like insulin resistance, obesity, and increased chance of having vascular problems.
Mhm.
Or somebody who has an elevated lipoprotein lately. You asked me about the non-conventional risk factors,
Correct.
and somebody having high CRP levels. HSCRP is one inflammatory marker in the body,
Mm.
which is also used to screen. There is no consensus on certain of these parameters. That's why we
Right.
don't usually recommend them to our patients or people who walk
Okay.
in for risk assessment. So the most important thing is the age, gender, ethnicity, presence or absence of hypertension, presence or absence of diabetes. Then is the patient on treatment for this? Is the patient a smoker? So these are the main risk indicators, which we are going to address when a person walks into our clinic on Saturday.
Okay. And when we talk about family risk, what family members are you guys looking at? Like, are we talking about cousins and aunties, or is it more so parents and siblings? Like what is the scope of family
The
history that?
immediate family members, the
Mhm.
parents or siblings, and the first degree relatives.
Okay.
And particularly in men, if the first degree relative had a cardiovascular event less than 55 years of age,
Mhm.
and in women less than 65 years of age. So basically, we are referring to the immediate family members and the first degree relatives.
So is that to say then that men tend to have a higher risk of heart disease or
Yeah,
cardiovascular disease?
yeah, that's true. Up to a certain age. Once women attain menopause, then it tends to equalize a sort of,
Mm,
because of the protective effect of estrogen hormone. They say that could be one of the reasons why women are protected against these cardiovascular events,
okay.
yeah, in their youth,
In their younger years,
younger
yeah.
age. Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah,
once women hit menopause,
yeah.
then it's essentially
That protective
equal
effect
equal
wears off.
risk for being, I guess we get into the same pot and same pool as men and
Yeah,
their heart risk.
and then their risk is different.
Okay.
They respond differently to treatment, to interventions compared to the male patients. Yeah, they
Oh
have
well, that's
higher
that's
morbidity compared to the
really.
males after that menopausal age.
Okay, so
Yeah,
before men. Oh wow. Okay,
yeah.
so before menopause, our risk is lower.
The risk is lower doesn't mean they won't have it.
Right, it's
They
lower,
can
but it's
still.
still
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
which means that men and women need to come get the screening.
yeah. That is
Um,
very important. Yeah,
because no, and to me that it becomes even a more important conversation, because if you're saying that although in our younger years we are at lower risk, but once we are post menopause, we are at the same risk level, but essentially a higher death rate,
right.
right?
You yes, you analyzed
That's
it correctly. That's correct.
and I sometimes sometimes people don't like to use that word, but I think that we have to understand how real this is, and that we're not talking about, oh, you're at risk and you may end up with a slight episode and a one night stay in the hospital. Heart disease and cardiovascular instances and incidents in some occasions end in people losing their life. It ends
Yeah,
in death,
yeah,
and sometimes very unexpected. And I think that's where these screenings come in, because how many of us have know someone or have known someone near to us or within our family circles, within our friendship circles, that have had some type of cardiovascular instance, and it came as a shock, right?
yeah,
They didn't know, the family didn't know, everything was fine, and then they lose their life. And
yeah,
that's when you realize, hold on, there was something wrong. They had a blocked artery or whatever it may have been, that had they just simply done a routine screening simply based on age and risk factors, that it could have been uncovered, right? And as they say, prevention is better than cure
yeah.
any day of the week, right? So I think they went in having these conversations, and I think it is so. I always I always enjoy the fact that Health City has these conversations with the public about preventative medicine and healthcare, because it is, to me, so contrary to what many of us know. when it comes to our own health. And yes, I think medicine as the medical field as a whole and healthcare field as a whole has evolved over time to talk about these things. But in our own, speaking in our own environment, and knowing the number of conversations we've had here on Straight Talk with Health City about preventative medicine, because it always takes me back to the fact that I used to think it was so crazy that for anybody who knows me, and I've talked about it, more times than not, I have had bariatric surgery, right, for the purpose of weight loss. And I remember at the time, back in 2008, most health insurance companies at that time did not cover bariatric surgery until, I think, even the insurance I had, you had to have at least three comorbid conditions before they would cover bariatric surgery. And I remember the first time I learned that, and I was like, okay, so you want people to be three-quarters of the way dead before you'll actually do anything about it. And I know friends in more recent years where even insurance companies, they haven't evolved fully, but insurance companies themselves, because healthcare has evolved into a greater conversation around preventative medicine, slowly but surely insurance companies have evolved with them. So I do know of friends who have had, without being three-quarters of the way dead, right, have gotten clearance to go and do, for example, bariatric surgery and cover it through insurance. And I think it is. And so I hope through these conversations, as I hope the populace evolves with it, because preventative medicine is so much based on us.
Yeah.
As much as it is important that when doctors like yourself and medical professionals like yourself come on radio, Instagram, Facebook, and have these conversations, now it's up to us to follow through. It's up to us to send the email, to make the appointment, to make the time, to say, and then to make the changes where necessary. And I will be the first to say that the changes aren't always fun, right? Because if you, for example, if you weren't exercising before, and then they say, okay, these are after a screening, we now recommend that this is the exercises we recommend, or the frequency of exercise, and oh no, now take the fried food out of your diet. Like, I like fried chicken, like I like fried chicken, right? But so it's up to us. It is absolutely up to us now to say they are doing their best to advise us that these are the steps that we can take to essentially save our life.
Yeah.
Right. And so I thank you for bringing this conversation, offering these screenings. So I extend to the public just a reminder that it's now up to us to really follow through on the information that's hand. We can't, and I always say, you don't know till you know. And now for those who are listening, they know. And we can't play ignorant to the fact that we've heard Dr. Raghu say, if you're 20 to 79,
without a known cardiovascular disease.
right. So he's
They
not
are the
telling,
ones.
yeah. So he's not saying, oh, if you think you may have any cardiovascular illness, he is saying that for all of us, this is important.
Yeah.
That it's better to know, and know as early as possible, than to sit down there and say, well, I feel healthy. Right, because we all, and unfortunately, we've heard stories. I remember everyone was so alarmed. I want to say, oh, I lose track of time, but that's probably more than a year ago. There was the incident of what I would consider a relatively young man, who and I remember hearing people who used to run on the track, with the young man, who said, but he ran on the track every day. He was exercising every day, and it was on the track that he essentially had a cardiovascular event and lost his life. And if my memory serves me correct, he was under 40.
Yeah.
And I just remember speaking to someone who didn't necessarily know him personally, but exercised at the same time that this person exercised. And he was like, he was always there. He was always running. He was always. And so we just never, ever know. And if you could, and I think you've kind of touched on this through the course of our conversation, what are some of the risk factors that, in addition to age, what are the things that increase our risk of cardiovascular illness and cardiovascular incidents?
And the most common risk factors that we encounter in our daily clinical practice are diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
and then hypertension,
Mm-hmm.
cholesterol issues, then obesity,
Mm-hmm.
smoking, cigarettes, and
Mm-hmm.
other abusive substances, and excess alcohol consumption. So these are the commonest risk factors that are associated with increased risk for cardiovascular disease.
What's considered excess alcohol
Oh
consumption?
my God, that's a very difficult question to answer. I don't.
I'm
I don't.
listening
Yeah, just say
intently.
social drinking is better than drink alcohol in moderation. If I have to give a particular number, definitions are different in different
Yes.
parts of the world. So I'm not exactly sure what amounts to excessive alcohol consumption.
Okay.
Yeah, but alcohol in moderation is the right word.
Okay. Moderation.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
we gotta accept that for today.
Yeah.
For today alone, because I know with the amount of staycationing and like that's going on right about now. I mean, thankfully it's good for the economy, but I can tell you what, I've seen some livers at risk. Okay, so we might need to start trying to define moderation. But it's important that I haven't had any medical professional that says, oh well, no, never do that, right? But it's always a conversation that it's about moderation. It's about ensuring that you don't overdo anything, because I think that goes even for the things that we consider to be generally good for us, because
Maybe less than 2 units.
2 units
A day.
uh, okay, so that's your estimate of moderation. There we go. Because I think during I was talking to someone recently, and they said they never drank at home until coronavirus came around, and then it was kind of like, well, what else is there to do,
Yeah,
right?
many people say that their lifestyle has changed. I mean, not changed for good, but rather they have put on weight because of lack of physical activity. There's no social function, sitting at home all the time, working from home, and then losing mental peace for various reasons,
Yeah.
maybe financial reasons, loss of
Yes.
job or whatever. So these have been really testing times, and COVID doesn't necessarily infect lung. It is a multi-system involvement. It can
Yes.
involve the heart. It can involve many other organs. It's basically a multi-system problem. Yeah.
And I just want to go over for those who may just be tuning in to the show. So, Health City, in honor of World Heart Day, which is tomorrow, is offering a cardiovascular screening package at the hospital on October 3rd. In that package, what is included? If you
Yeah.
could just go over that.
Yeah. To just revise the things what we discussed in the beginning. The main thing is the history, medical history of the patient, and clinical examination, which includes the anthropometric measurements, the pulse, blood pressure, and the lifestyle history, then family history that includes genetics, then do blood works, glycosylated hemoglobin and lipid profile, then CT coronary artery calcium scoring, yeah, and dietitian and physiotherapy, you know, advice.
Okay.
So this is all part of the package.
Okay. And Shamar, if you could remind them, please, how do they reach out to the hospital if they want to book one of these screenings? What's the cost of it? Just the procedure as to getting their spot booked on October 3rd.
Definitely. So World Heart Day at healthcity.ky is where you can email World Heart Day at healthcity.ky, or you can call 325-7271, and it's between 9 and 12 on this Saturday coming. And we'll have both Dr. Raghu and Dr. Ravi available so that we can get as many people who want to come through as possible. And as Dr. Raghu already said, it has vitals, blood work, CT, calcium scoring, cardiology consult, as well as the lifestyle modification component, which with physiotherapy and nutrition, that's always important. And you made the point over and over and over, Ruth Anna. At the end of the day, if on the back end you need help, obviously Dr. Raghu is here to run into an emergency room at 2-3 o'clock in the morning to help to save you. But we want to stop it. We want to make sure that we're able to have the conversation before then. Like our ad that's running actually says, let's have a heart to heart, right?
Okay.
So let's have that heart to heart conversation. Let's see if there are issues, or if you maybe need to tweak a little bit in order to make sure that you give yourself the best probability of not having issues later. Then let's have that conversation now, because as much as Dr. Raghu will be there with you if you need it, He doesn't want to be there with you in an emergency room. He would rather have that conversation 2 years prior this
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, in order to prevent you from going that route in the future.
Absolutely, and it's prevention is better than cure,
Yeah.
as we've said earlier, and so that is how you reach out to Health City. Tomorrow's World Heart Day. I can't stop thinking about the fact that like prevention is better than cure, and it is just I think too many of us know people who just never had any idea that there was anything going on with their cardiovascular system, and would an aneurysm fall in the realm of a cardio incident?
An aortic aneurysm.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it,
was
it comes. Yeah, it
mhm.
comes under the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and I think about um, a classmate of mine, like he was 32 from university, working a very high stress job, mind you. But absolutely, he lived in the U.S. And he was living in a city away from his parents and such. But one of those people climbing the corporate ladder very quickly, and all his parents knew was that they hadn't heard from him over an entire weekend, which was unusual. But he didn't live with anyone, so it wasn't that someone missed him coming home. Come Monday morning, his secretary finds him laid on his desk, and he'd had an aneurysm on what they suspect was the Friday evening.
Must be a ruptured aneurysm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, someone who we all considered relatively healthy. Someone who exercised regularly, someone who generally ate well, but maybe just unaware, possibly unaware of any risk factors. And so it's incidents in my life like that I think about when you said, okay, well, this is for anyone between the age of 20 through 79, I think was the, whether you know about cardiovascular risk or not. And I just quickly before, because we are about 3 minutes out from the end of the show, but how much of a how much of a how much of a role can stress play in cardiovascular health? Let's call it that. Is that a huge?
Yes, it's a big risk factor.
Mm,
Yeah. Mental conditions can
mhm,
predispose to cardiovascular diseases.
mm,
There are some conditions like heart attacks. There are stress-induced heart dysfunctions.
mhm,
They're known as cardiomyopathies. There are specific entities.
mm,
Like stress can bring on various things like arrhythmias,
mhm.
abnormalities of the heart rate, rhythm.
Yes.
Yeah. So stress itself can contribute largely, and if there are additional risk factors which we discussed earlier, so that is going to just compound,
Yes.
and the intensity of having the chances are high.
Of event, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, we are 2 minutes out from 6 o'clock, so I will ask each of you gentlemen to just give me, in about a minute or less, any final thoughts or reminder to the listening public. And Dr. Raghu has put you up first, Mr.
So,
Shamari.
so that means Dr. Ragu is not going. You know what that means, right? He's
So
like,
he said, "You take
you,
your
you
2 minutes."
take it. No, no, no. Dr. Ragu probably will want to close, but once again, Health City just wants to make sure as best as possible people take care of themselves. So if you want to come out, it's $2.99 US World Heart Day at healthcity.ky. And it's 325-7271. You can call or text that number in order to book the appointment. And Ruth Anna, seeing as it's going to be my last official time in studio with you once
Yes.
again, it's been an absolute pleasure. We will meet you, and I'm still not sure if I'm coming next week.
Yes, you
based
are.
on the fact that you're not going to be here.
You have you're being turned over to a wonderful, wonderful host. I promise. I promise. Promise.
Okay.
Pinky
Well,
promise.
I'll listen in
Brownie
Wednesday and make my call
please,
after that.
please do. But it's always been my pleasure to host Medical Monday. But certainly I will be a continued voice in our community. But it is time for me to make some more time for family and other things at this time. So, but it has certainly been my pleasure to serve the community in this position as your host. But so I guess that is Dr. Raghu has opted not to give his. Are you going to give us any final thoughts or reminders, sir?
Yeah, most
Okay.
important is I would request and also like the listeners to make use of this opportunity coming their way on 3rd of October, because cardiac risk assessment is a very, very important screening tool to predict. Usually it is done to predict the 10-year risk.
Yes.
And the second thing is that there are three levels of interventions. One is at the lifestyle modification. It sounds fascinating, but to implement lifestyle measures is not that easy in our lives. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. When it's easier said than done. Second
Okay.
thing is pharmacologic interventions. I'm sure many people wouldn't like to take medicines in the long term. So if you want to avoid medications, and third is catheter-based interventions or surgical interventions. So that's the the highest form of intervention
Yes.
that one can have. So you need to decide which type of intervention you would like to have.
Okay.
So basically, the screening is for preventing diseases, and also in the process, if somebody is identified to have certain medical condition or a cardiac condition, we can plan and devise a long term treatment strategy.
Awesome.
And women of reproductive age, young people, there are no exceptions. But the chances of having cardiovascular event is high as you age older, and if you have more number of risk factors. So that's going to add up to the risk and lead to an event sooner than later. So that's why the
We
purpose of doing this.
identify the risk
Thank you very
early. Thank
much
you
for
both.
having
It
me.
has been my pleasure. And guys, I'll be back here on Wednesday at 5 p.m. sharp. And at that time, I will get the honor and privilege of introducing you to your new host of Straight Talk. I won't let the cat out of the bag just yet. So you got to tune in 5 to 6 on this Wednesday. And they will be taking over the reins that come next week, Monday. But for those of you on the roadways, please drive safely. And I will talk to you guys on Wednesday at 5 p.m. right here on Star 92.7.